This is the new Windows Passive Crossover Designer. It's modeled after a very popular Excel spreadsheet called the Passive Crossover Designer that was by Jeff Bagby, very popular. This is modeled to look a lot like it and act a lot like it, although it's changed a bit over after the initial release due to some user requests. So what we're going to do here is just show how to get started. This is the system screen that comes up when you first open the program. We'll set things up so that you can work with a basic two-way, just the minimum amount to get started. Won't do anything fancy. So what we'll do is start from the top left. The way this is laid out to work, at least on the system page, is you start from the top left and work down, but we won't have to do but about half of what you see there just to get started. If you go to the top left, look at the cursor, you'll see select the default directory. This makes it easy to import and export files. It's best to set up a subdirectory first where you're going to have everything, all your measurement files, and where you'll save your session files if you want to do that. If you look up here on the left, follow the cursor. What we do is we'll start off with opening that up. It brings up a standard browser dialog. We'll go to the subdirectory where I've installed everything. In this case, we call it project files. Click that open, and we see two-way. We click on that one. We say OK. Now, every time we try to import or export files, that's where it's going to start. Now, we'll skip the import save session because at this point we're not doing that. At some point later on, when everything's loaded, you can save a session file, and the next time you open up, it'll do all the work for you ahead of time. You don't have to manually import anything. So the next step below that is enter driver names for the project. This is an optional. Nice to have names within it, but you don't have to do anything. You can just leave it this way. In this case, I'll just make a quick change and call this an SB Acoustics tweeter. And then we'll go down to the woofer and just call it an SB Acoustics woofer. And we'll leave the mid-range there. It doesn't really matter whether there's anything there or not. So that's all you have to do there, and this will get saved with every session file, and when you bring it back, it will tell you what it was you worked with. If you want to put as much detail, you can put as much detail as you want. When you do that, at least it makes it easier to know exactly what you were working with. The next step, and a key step, is to import the measurement files. In this case, we actually have measurement files. You can create files on your own, although it's a difficult procedure and leaves a lot of room for error. But in this case, I have actual measurements. So what we have here is you see import FRD or ZMA. FRD is the extension that we use to designate a sound pressure level file. ZMA is the extension we use to designate an impedance file. Although you can actually import a .text, it's nice to have the extensions here, then you don't confuse which file is which. So we load a tweeter file, and you can see we came up here in the C project files two-way folder. So we're going to bring a tweeter excess phase file in. For now, we'll not talk about what that means. This is just a direct measurement file, so just consider it that. It comes up and tells you that it's imported it, or if it hasn't, there's an issue. In this case, there were no problems at all. It converted a number of lines. This thing interpolates to an internal number of around 506 data points, either 506 or 508. So it doesn't really matter whether you have more or fewer, it'll still interpolate to an internal range. So in this case, it reduces the number down. Nice to have extra detail though. Tells you what, if there was anything rejected for data issues. There was one comment line in this, it skips that. If it has to have 3 columns per line. In this case, per file that is. In this case, what we need in all cases, frequency, SPL and impedance, that is, we need frequency, magnitude, and phase. So we say OK there. We go up here again to the left and we say load tweeter ZMA. We pull in the tweeter ZMA again from the project files two-way area. does the same thing. It's got a different range, just a different kind of measurement, but it still has the same type of data, 3 columns of data, frequency, magnitude, and phase. We say OK on that one. There was no problem with it. Then we do the same with the woofer. So we bring in a woofer excess phase file, and we bring in a woofer ZMA impedance file, and you're almost ready to go. If we go down one step further, you'll see it says select design type and wiring configuration. Essentially, this is what kind of crossover you want. If you see that little pop-up, there are a number of these where if you have a mouse hover over top, it'll give you a little piece of information related to it that should be helpful. So now what you have to do is say what you're going to do. In this case, we wanted to do a two-way design. So I come over here and select in the pull down, go down to parallel two-way, and we're ready to go. And you notice this came up active, the tweeter came up active down here, and we have a woofer. We list a woofer 2, however, it says inactive. In this case, we're not going to use it, so we could actually just make it disappear from the screen if we want. But we'll just leave that for now. Now, this is the end of the initial section. What will be happening next is we'll be going into the woofer and tweeter screens. Go up to the tab. You select the screen. You can see the measurements. Over here in the middle up top is the SPL measurement. Over on the right is the impedance measurement. And essentially we sort of work top and bottom here as well. But that'll be for the next chapter. We'll do that. We'll cover design for tweeter and design for the woofer, and then show what happens with the system screens. Just to preview that as well, you'll see we have a number of tabs on the system screen as well for other windows that can be opened. The primarily system tab, which is for system response, SPL, and impedance. We have instructions window, schematic overlays. So we have a number of things. These will be covered in other chapters or other sections.